Captain Marcus Derrick stood at the command deck of the UEF Phoenix, staring out at the stars. Humanity had only recently made its mark in the stars, and the vastness of space still had an overwhelming effect on him. The universe, once so distant and abstract, was now their home, a place where humans could forge their future among countless other civilizations. It was a beautiful, intimidating thought. Today, however, the beauty of space was marred by something unusual. A signal, a faint distress call had come through their long-range sensors. The message was encrypted in a strange code, one no human could decipher. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," said Lieutenant Jen Ramirez, her voice cutting through Marcus's thoughts. She was standing by the communication panel, her eyes fixed on the screen. Marcus made his way over, his boots clicking softly on the polished floor. He leaned in close, staring at the code on the screen. It was a distress signal, but its source was unknown. The signal was weak, barely coming through, but it was there. "We're going after it," Marcus ordered, already setting course. He knew better than to ignore any distress call, especially in these uncharted parts of space. The Phoenix adjusted its course, its engines humming as it powered through the void. Hours later, they came upon the source of the distress signal, a massive, sleek ship drifting aimlessly through space, its hull damaged, as if it had been in some kind of battle. The ship wasn't human. It was larger than anything the UEF had ever built, with a design that looked almost organic, shaped like a giant insect with sleek curves and bioluminescent markings. It was clearly an alien craft. "Do you think it's a trap?" Ramirez asked, her voice tinged with concern. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. But we can't leave someone stranded out here. Let's see who's on board." They docked with the mysterious vessel, and the crew of the Phoenix cautiously boarded the alien ship. The interior was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen before. It was dark, with strange patterns glowing faintly along the walls, giving off an eerie, almost otherworldly glow. The air felt heavy, as if the space itself was alive. The ship was empty, save for one occupant, an alien, lying unconscious in what appeared to be a royal chamber. She was a woman. Her skin a deep shade of violet. Her features sharp and regal. Her long, silver hair flowed around her like a liquid, and her clothing shimmered with strange symbols. She looked peaceful, yet the fact that she was alone in this desolate ship suggested something far darker. "She doesn't look like someone who'd need rescuing," Ramirez muttered. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You'd be surprised." After a quick scan, the onboard medical team confirmed that the alien was alive but unconscious. Her heart rate was steady, and there were no signs of injury. But there was something strange about her, something that Marcus couldn't put his finger on. "We're taking her back to the Phoenix," Marcus decided, turning to his crew. "If she's in danger, we need to help. If she's dangerous, well, we'll deal with that too." They transported the alien back to the Phoenix, where they placed her in one of the medical bays. It was clear she wasn't a threat, but her presence was unsettling. Her body appeared to be in perfect condition, but the more Marcus looked at her, the more he felt like there was something special about her, something powerful. Hours passed, and the alien finally woke up. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing with a strange, almost unnatural light. She looked around the room, her gaze narrowing as she saw the humans surrounding her. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, in a voice that was both regal and sharp, the alien spoke. "Who dares to disturb me?" Her voice was calm, yet there was an undeniable authority in it, as if she was used to commanding the attention of everyone around her. Marcus stepped forward, his gaze steady. "I'm Captain Marcus Derrick, of the United Earth Federation. We found your ship drifting in space. It was damaged, and we brought you aboard to help." The alien narrowed her eyes, her lips curling into a slight, condescending smile. "You presume much, human," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "What right do you have to touch me, to save me?" Marcus felt his patience wearing thin, but he kept his tone even. "We saved you because it was the right thing to do. Now, we need to know who you are and what happened to your ship." The alien, clearly not used to being questioned, tilted her head. "You know nothing of me, human. I am Princess Lyra of the Volar, daughter of the great matriarch. I do not need saving from your kind." Her eyes flashed with something dangerous, and Marcus could almost feel the weight of her presence. Volar. Marcus had heard of them. They were a powerful, enigmatic race. Their psychic abilities unmatched in the galaxy. The Volar controlled multiple systems, their empire stretching across vast stretches of space. They were known for their cruelty and their iron-fisted rule over countless worlds. And this princess? Was she one of the rulers? "I didn't know the Volar had royalty out here," Marcus said, keeping his tone neutral. "What happened to your ship?" Lyra's gaze turned distant, as if she was remembering something painful. "My ship was attacked," she said quietly. "By the Kalith." The name sent a chill down Marcus's spine. The Kalith were a brutal, war-hungry race, known for their desire to conquer and destroy. They were enemies of nearly every species they encountered, and they had a particular hatred for the Volar. "We barely escaped," Lyra continued. "The Kalith are relentless. They'll stop at nothing to wipe us out." Marcus nodded. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you. We'll protect you." Lyra's eyes flicked to him. And for a brief moment, Marcus saw something in her eyes that surprised him. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't respect. It was something more like curiosity. "You think you can protect me, human?" she asked, her voice both mocking and curious. Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "I think we can try." The princess scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "You are a human. What can your kind do that the Volar cannot?" Her voice was like ice, as if she was dismissing him outright. Marcus held his ground, though. "You'd be surprised. The humans I know don't back down easily, even when the odds are stacked against them." Lyra laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Then prove it, Captain Derek. Prove to me that your pathetic species is worth my time." Her words stung, but Marcus kept his composure. He could see that Lyra was proud, almost unbearably so, and that it would take more than words to make her see humanity in a new light. But if there was one thing Marcus had learned as a captain, it was this: humans might not have the psychic powers or the advanced technology of other species, but they had something far more valuable. They had determination. "We will," he said, meeting her gaze. "And when we do, you'll see just how much we're capable of." For a moment, the two of them stood in silence, their eyes locked. Lyra's expression remained unreadable, but the faintest flicker of something passed through her eyes. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps something else. Marcus knew this would not be easy. The Volar were a proud people, and Lyra was no exception. But as a captain, it was his job to lead, to inspire, and to protect. And for the first time, he felt a sense of challenge not just for the mission, but for this alien princess who seemed to think so little of humanity. The question was, could he change her mind? The days that followed Lyra's rescue were filled with tension. Princess Lyra, once a regal and powerful ruler of the Volar, had now become a reluctant ally of the humans. Marcus Derek, the captain of the Phoenix, had hoped her time spent with the crew would soften her attitude. But her pride was as unyielding as ever. Every conversation, every look, carried an air of superiority, as if she believed humans could never truly be her equals. But for Marcus, there was something else in the way she carried herself. Something beneath the arrogance and disdain. He had seen it in her eyes. The first time they spoke, she had been afraid, and it wasn't the kind of fear a princess like her should ever show. Yet she did. The Phoenix was now part of an intergalactic mission, one that was far bigger than they had imagined. The Kalith, the ruthless enemies of the Volar, had launched a full-scale attack on the Volar Empire. Lyra's ship had barely escaped with her life. But even on the Phoenix, far from her home, the Kalith were closing in. "We need to make contact with the Volar Empire," Lyra had insisted on the second day after her rescue. She was sitting in the ship's control room, her eyes scanning the stars, a look of intense concentration on her face. Marcus glanced at her, his arms crossed. "You mean your home?" I thought you said the Kalith were already on the way there. Why risk going back? Lyra's eyes narrowed, her voice as sharp as ever. Because that is where I belong. The Volar will not survive without their princess. Marcus knew she was right. Her return might be the key to rallying the Volar forces to stand against the Kalith. But getting her back to Volar Prime would be no easy feat. The Kalith fleet was massive, and their warships were nearly as powerful as the Volars, if not more. We're not equipped to fight them off, Marcus said honestly. We're only a small vessel. Compared to the Kalith fleet, Lyra stood up, her tall, regal figure casting a long shadow across the room. Then you will learn how to fight, Captain. You will learn quickly. My people are not weak, and neither am I. Marcus didn't argue. It was clear that the princess wasn't just asking for help, she was demanding it. And though it irritated him, he understood that the situation was bigger than pride. It was about survival. The next few days were a blur of preparations. The Phoenix had never faced such an advanced threat before. The crew worked tirelessly, upgrading the ship's weapon systems, scanning for enemy fleets, and preparing strategies. Lyra, though aloof, was surprisingly helpful. Her knowledge of the Volar's war tactics and her ability to communicate with the Volar forces through psychic channels was invaluable. But the longer Lyra stayed on the Phoenix, the more Marcus noticed a shift in her. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was becoming something else, a leader in her own right. She didn't just command with force. She inspired people. When she stood before the crew, offering them battle plans or sharing her wisdom, there was an air of respect in her voice that wasn't there before. The humans on board had begun to listen, really listen, when she spoke. Still, the question hung in the air. Would it be enough to defeat the Kalith? One evening, as the Phoenix neared the edge of Volar space, Lyra called Marcus to the control room. He stepped inside, finding her staring at the holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes scanning the lines of ships and borders. We're getting close, she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. Marcus nodded. Are you ready for this? She didn't immediately answer, her eyes lingering on the map. It was clear that this wasn't just about her people, it was about something more personal. The fear that had flickered in her eyes when she first woke up on the Phoenix was gone, replaced by something that Marcus could only call determination. The Volar Empire. Her people. Her family, this was her duty, and nothing would stand in her way. I am ready, she finally replied, turning to face him. But I don't expect you to understand. Marcus met her gaze, his face unreadable. I don't understand much of your world, Lyra. But I know one thing. You don't have to do this alone. Not anymore. She stared at him for a moment, as if considering his words. Then, to his surprise, she nodded slightly. Perhaps I don't. The next few hours were tense. As they approached Volar Prime, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Kalith fleet should have been farther away. Yet their ships seemed to be everywhere. They had caught up much faster than expected. We've been compromised, Lyra said, her voice sharp. They know we're coming. We won't make it to the planet without a fight. Then we fight, Marcus said. We'll make sure you get to your people. Lyra's lips curled into a faint smile, her eyes flashing with something akin to admiration. You're starting to understand. Marcus turned to his crew. All hands, prepare for battle. We may not have the firepower of a full fleet, but we have something the Kalith don't have. Unity. We fight as one, or we don't fight at all. The Phoenix was outnumbered, but Marcus was used to those odds. The crew had trained for situations like this, though they had never imagined something so high stakes. But the tension on board was different this time. Everyone was focused, knowing that they weren't just protecting one ship, they were protecting an entire race, an entire empire. Lyra stood at the helm, her eyes closed in concentration. Marcus could feel the energy shift in the room as her psychic powers reached out, communicating with the Volar forces scattered throughout the system. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was the last hope for her people. Ready, Captain, she said, her voice steady, yet laced with an undeniable edge. The Kalith fleet appeared on the horizon, massive ships looming like dark clouds against the stars. Marcus gripped the armrest of his seat, his jaw clenched in determination. He wasn't going to let the Caliph destroy everything they had fought for. Not today. Target their lead ship, Marcus ordered. All weapons, fire at will. The battle erupted in an instant. Lasers and plasma blasts lit up the dark expanse of space as the Phoenix engaged the enemy. Despite being outnumbered, the crew of the Phoenix fought with everything they had. The ship's weapon systems, upgraded by Lyra's input, fired with deadly precision, cutting through the Caliph fleet's defenses. The Volar forces, responding to Lyra's call, joined the battle, their advanced ships providing backup. The Phoenix weaved in and out of enemy fire, taking heavy hits but holding strong. It was a dance of destruction. Each move calculated, each moment a risk. But Marcus had a plan. He knew the Caliph, if they could break through their line, they might have a chance to land on Volar Prime before the full force of the fleet arrived. "Keep them distracted," Marcus shouted to his crew. "We make a break for the planet." With Lyra's powers helping to coordinate their movements, the Phoenix sped toward Volar Prime, weaving through the debris and enemy ships. It was a dangerous move, but it was their best shot. In the chaos of the battle, Marcus couldn't help but glance at Lyra. She was standing by the communications console, her eyes glowing with an eerie light as she directed the Volar forces. She was no longer just a princess. She was a symbol of hope, a leader, in her own right. The Phoenix punched through the last line of defense, and Volar Prime loomed large on the view screen. The crew of the Phoenix had done it. They had made it, but this was only the beginning. The Phoenix had barely touched down on Volar Prime before the battle seemed to grow even more intense. The Volar homeworld was a sight to behold, a jewel of the galaxy with towering cities, shimmering seas, and vast landscapes. Yet, in that moment, all its beauty seemed overshadowed by the looming threat of the Caliph. As soon as the ship's engines powered down, the crew could hear the distant rumblings of conflict from the planet's surface. The Caliph were relentless, and their war machine was unforgiving. Despite the battle the Phoenix had just fought, it was clear the hardest part of their mission had only just begun. "We're here," Marcus said, standing beside Lyra as she gazed out at her homeworld, her face a mix of determination and sorrow. She had been away for so long, and now her return was not a victory, but the start of a desperate struggle. "Volar Prime won't fall," she said firmly, though there was a trace of doubt in her voice that she didn't let show. "We'll make sure of it." Lyra had been guiding the crew through the last phase of the battle, her psychic abilities helping to coordinate the Volar forces, but there was no doubt she was also feeling the weight of everything. She was not just a princess anymore. She was a leader, a symbol of hope for her people. And the pressure was suffocating. Marcus understood. He had seen it in her eyes since the first time they met. Lyra was not used to being helped. She was used to leading with strength and power, not relying on others. But now, she had no choice. The Caliph were everywhere. And the Volar needed every bit of help they could get. They needed humanity. "I'll get the reinforcements from the Volar fleet," Lyra said, turning away from the view screen and heading toward the comms room. "You'll need to stay here and make sure the ship is ready for the next phase of the plan." Marcus nodded, watching her leave. He understood. She was taking charge, even if she hadn't quite accepted that she was not alone in this fight. Humanity had proven itself worthy of her respect, but that didn't mean she trusted them entirely. Meanwhile, the rest of the Phoenix crew was busy preparing for the next move. The Caliph weren't just attacking Volar Prime, they were attacking everything the Volar stood for. The cities, the structures, the people, they were all under threat. The Volar, despite their psychic powers, had been caught off guard, and their resistance was faltering. Lyra's return was their last hope. But they couldn't afford to waste any more time. The Caliph were closing in. "We've got to act fast," Marcus said to his crew. "Lyra is counting on us. Her people are counting on us." Everyone nodded, their expressions grim. They had been trained for moments like this, but no one could have predicted what they were about to face. This wasn't just a fight for survival, this was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Hours passed as they watched the planet from orbit. The Caliph warships hovered above, blocking the sunlight from the surface. It was a dark, oppressive scene. But in the midst of that darkness, something was stirring. Lyra returned to the bridge, her face serious, but there was a new sense of resolve in her eyes. "The Volar fleet is ready," she said. "They're rallying at the Eastern Hemisphere. We'll need to break through the Kalith defenses to join them." Marcus nodded, his mind already working through the plan. "We'll lead the charge," he said. "We'll break through their lines and make sure the Volar fleet gets through." As the Phoenix prepared to take off once more, Lyra turned to face Marcus. "You know, human," she said, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're here." Marcus smirked, though he could see the genuine appreciation behind her words. "I'm not going anywhere, princess," he replied. They shared a look, one that spoke volumes about their journey together. The princess who had once dismissed humanity was now seeing them in a new light. And Marcus? He was beginning to understand the weight of leadership, especially the kind that came with responsibility for an entire race. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about securing a future for Lyra's people, and humanity's role in that future. As the Phoenix broke through the clouds of Volar Prime's atmosphere, Marcus could feel the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just about proving humanity's worth to Lyra or the Volar, it was about proving it to the galaxy. The Volar fleet was massive, but they were not nearly as prepared as the Kalith. They had been caught off guard and were struggling to reorganize. Marcus's plan was simple: give them the time they needed to rally and prepare for the final assault. To do that, the Phoenix and the Volar forces had to break through the Kalith lines. The battle raged once again, this time closer to the planet's surface. The Phoenix darted through enemy fire, dodging and weaving as Marcus called out orders. Keeping his crew in line, the Kalith were relentless, but with Lyra's psychic abilities guiding them and the humans' unyielding spirit, they fought back with everything they had. Lyra stood at the communication panel, her focus intense as she connected with the Volar fleet. "Hold your positions," she said, her voice carrying a calm authority. "We're coming for you." Marcus, at the helm, could feel the tension building. The Phoenix was taking heavy fire, but the ship was built to withstand a lot. They had to keep pushing forward, keep fighting, and keep the Kalith at bay long enough for the Volar forces to regroup. The battle seemed endless, the air thick with the sound of energy, blasts, and explosions. But Marcus's focus never wavered. He could feel the eyes of his crew on him, and he knew this was the moment that would define them all. This was the test of unity that Lyra had spoken about. "Steady," Marcus ordered. "We're almost there. One last push." The Phoenix surged forward, its engines burning brightly as it cut through the Kalith fleet. The Volar forces, now fully regrouped, pushed forward as well. Together, the two forces, a mix of human ingenuity and Volar, might fought side by side, pushing the Kalith back from Volar Prime. But the Kalith were not finished. Their massive warships loomed above, firing at the Phoenix with all their might. Lyra stood beside Marcus, her eyes glowing as she focused all her energy on the task at hand. She reached out with her mind, connecting with the Volar fleet, to coordinate their movements. "Focus fire on their lead ship," Lyra commanded, her voice echoing through the comms. "We take down the flagship, and the rest will fall." Marcus gripped the controls tighter. "You heard her, everyone. Let's take down that flagship." The Phoenix and the Volar fleet converged on the Kalith flagship. With their combined firepower, they began to chip away at its defenses. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, it felt like they had a real chance at victory. The final moments of the battle were a blur of action. The Kalith flagship exploded in a burst of energy, signaling the end of their command over the skies above Volar Prime. The remaining Kalith ships, without leadership, began to retreat, their morale shattered. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, the battle was over. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the triumphant cheers of the Volar and human forces. Marcus looked over at Lyra, who stood silently beside him, her face set in determination. She had led her people back from the brink of destruction, and she had done so with the help of humanity. Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at him. "I never expected this," she said quietly, almost to herself. I thought I would be the one to save my people. But we did this together. Marcus smiled. I told you, Princess. You don't have to do it alone. The dust had barely settled after the battle, when Marcus and the crew of the Phoenix received the news they had been waiting for. The Caliph had been defeated. Their fleet had scattered, and Volar Prime had been saved. The Volar forces were still in disarray, but the pressure had lifted. Yet, despite the victory, Marcus could feel that something was still missing. The fight had been brutal, and there had been casualties, both human and Volar. But now, as the battle-worn Phoenix hovered above the planet, the realization began to settle in. This was not just a military victory. It was a turning point. Lyra had led her people to safety, but her role was not over. The future of her empire of the galaxy depended on the choices they made now. We did it, Lyra said quietly, standing beside Marcus on the bridge of the Phoenix. Her gaze was distant, as though she were still processing the weight of everything that had happened. For the first time since he had met her, Marcus saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. The battle had been fierce, and though she had led her people with strength, she was still carrying the burden of their survival. Marcus didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. Lyra had been a warrior, strong and unyielding, yet now, she was something more. A leader who had brought her people to the edge of destruction, and then pulled them back into the light. And through all of it, humanity had stood by her side. We've done more than just win a war, Marcus finally said. We've changed the way the galaxy sees us. You've shown your people that not all hope is lost, Lyra. That's something you'll carry for the rest of your life. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. You think I'll be remembered for this? She asked, her voice almost skeptical. I think you'll be remembered for showing your people what real strength looks like, Marcus replied. And that's not just about power or psychic abilities. It's about doing what's right, even when the odds are against you. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, watching as Volar Prime's skies began to clear. The dark clouds of the Caliph retreating, with the last remnants of their fleet. For the first time in a long while, the planet seemed to be at peace. Lyra's gaze softened. I didn't expect humanity to fight so fiercely, she admitted. I thought you would turn and run, as so many other species would have done. But you didn't. You stood beside us. And now, she trailed off, her thoughts far away. Marcus could sense her internal struggle. She had always seen humans as weak, inferior to the mighty Volar. But now, after everything that had happened, she was beginning to see the truth. Humanity had its flaws, yes, but it also had something that few other species had. Heart. Determination. The will to fight, even when it seemed impossible. I've never been one for running, Marcus said with a smirk. We don't back down when it matters. Lyra smiled, but it was fleeting, almost as if she were testing the words. She looked at him for a long moment, her face softening in a way Marcus had never seen before. I've never had to rely on anyone, she said, her voice quiet. But perhaps I was wrong. Maybe there's strength in unity. Marcus nodded, understanding what she was trying to say. She had always carried the weight of her empire alone. But now, after everything they had been through together, she was realizing that true strength wasn't about carrying the burden by oneself. It was about sharing it with others, even if that meant relying on those you once thought beneath you. The sound of a soft chime echoed through the bridge, interrupting their conversation. It was a message from the Volar fleet. Captain Derek, Lyra said, her tone shifting into one of authority. This is it. The final stage. The Volar fleet is asking for our presence. Marcus turned to her, a knowing look passing between them. This was the moment. This was where the true work began. The Caliph had been defeated, but the war was far from over. The galaxy was changing, and Lyra would have to decide where her place was in this new world. The message from the Volar fleet was clear. Lyra was to return to the Volar capital, where she would be officially crowned as the leader of the Volar Empire. It was a moment that had been a long time coming, but one that Lyra had never anticipated. She had been running from this responsibility for so long, but now, The time had come for her to accept it fully. "We're going back to the capital," Lyra said, her voice steady, though Marcus could hear the uncertainty beneath it. "It's time to rebuild. Time to make sure this never happens again." Marcus didn't hesitate. He knew the role he had played in getting them this far, and he knew that his place was with her. Whatever her decision, he would support her. He had been by her side through every battle, and he wasn't about to leave now. "I'm with you, Princess," he said simply. "Wherever you go, I go." Lyra glanced at him, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. "You really are something else, Captain Derek." Marcus smiled, though there was a depth to his expression that showed just how much he had come to care for her. "I'm just doing my job, Princess, same as you." The Phoenix began its journey toward the Volar capital, the planet's shining spires coming into view as they descended into the atmosphere. The Volar fleet, now united and strengthened by the battle they had just won, was waiting for them. The Volar people had been shaken by the Kalith invasion, but they had proven their resilience. And now, with Lyra at the helm, they had a chance to rebuild and forge a new future. When the Phoenix finally landed on the capital's surface, it felt almost surreal. The last time Lyra had been here, she was a princess escaping a collapsing empire. Now, she was a queen, standing in front of her people, ready to lead them into the future. But as she stepped off the ship and onto the planet's surface, Marcus could see that she wasn't just stepping into a new role, she was stepping into her own. Realizing that her strength didn't come from her psychic abilities or her royal blood, it came from the people who believed in her. The Volar people greeted her with open arms, but it wasn't just her status as princess that won their loyalty. It was her actions, her decisions. She had fought for them, side by side with humans, and now they would fight for her. She had earned their respect. Lyra turned to Marcus as they stood at the front of the crowd, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of pride and exhaustion. "But it's here." Marcus stood beside her, watching the crowds cheer for her, for them, for humanity and the Volar working together. "It's not over yet, Lyra," he said, his voice steady. "But we're on the right path. Together." She smiled, the smile of someone who had finally found her place in the galaxy. Yes, together. And in that moment, both Marcus and Lyra knew that the future of the galaxy was not determined by the strength of their armies or the might of their weapons. It was determined by the choices they made, by the strength they found in one another.